My husband thought he was having a private conversation about how he was going to ruin my life. All the while, I sat at the same table, quiet and calm, listening to my own husband plot my downfall. He believed I didn't understand the language, so I stayed silent. What he doesn't know is that I understood every word. I had been spending 8 long months learning it in secret during lunch break and late night hours. And tonight, I was going to let him confess everything to my face, just so I could watch his world collapse the moment I finally answered him in his own tongue. Before we continue, please remember to like this video, subscribe, and tell me where you are watching from. Now, let's begin.
My name is Rebecca Bailey. I've been married to Timothy for 15 years. We lived in a quiet, comfortable townhouse in North Carolina with our 12-year-old cat, Machi, whom we adopted when we got married. I was 23. He was 30. I thought I had a good marriage. It was not perfect, but good enough. Timothy had his flaws, sure. But I trusted him so completely that I never imagined he was capable of this kind of cruelty. If anyone had told me that my husband of 15 years would want me ruined, miserable, and helpless, I would have laughed. I would have defended him. I would have sworn on everything I held dear that they were wrong, that my husband had my back. And that's the part that still hurts the most, because betrayal doesn't always come from monsters. Sometimes it comes from the person you trusted enough to give your whole life to. Timothy and I met at the train station. The train was late, and I was already tired of the day. He was standing a few feet away and made a quiet remark about the train never being on time. I agreed. That was it. When the train arrived, it was crowded. Someone bumped into me, and he steadied me without thinking, then apologized. We ended up standing near each other, talking about ordinary things. Work, where we were headed. Nothing important. He asked if I wanted coffee. I said yes. We got off at different stops, and I didn't think much of it afterward. It felt like one of those small, forgettable moments. I didn't know it would turn into something romantic. We dated quietly. He was the embodiment of a good man. When he proposed, it felt safe to say yes. I married him believing I had chosen well. I never imagined he would become someone else entirely. For the first few years, things were good. Not perfect, but solid. Friday night movies. Sunday morning trips to the farmer's market. Cooking together. Chopping vegetables. Laughing about whether sugar belonged in tomato sauce. Timothy would wake early to make me coffee and serve it in bed. We talked about children, buying a house with a yard, and growing old together. After our 12 years marriage anniversary, Timothy was promoted to senior manager at a tech company. His salary was increased, he had huge perks, and stock options that meant something real. I was proud of him, but the promotion changed things. Or maybe it revealed who he'd always been. He started keeping late nights, traveling constantly, and creating excuses to sleep outside our home. I confronted him once. After another late dinner, he barely touched before diving back into reading his emails. I asked if this endless work, constant trips, calls at all hours was what our life was now. He looked up and calmly told me that promotion comes with additionality responsibility. I understood at first. I told myself it would pass, but didn't. The late nights and the distance became everything. I was literally married, but single. Conversations about our future turned into conversations about his career. Date nights became client dinners where I smiled and said nothing. The man who once asked about my day stopped. The man who once gave me a listening ear stopped. He no longer made my coffee or kissed me goodbye. Indifference replaced attention. I remember exactly when I realized I felt like I have become totally invisible in my own marriage. It was a Tuesday, about 8 months after his promotion. My mom had called about a mammogram that needed follow-up. I told Timothy while standing in the kitchen, making dinner. He was scrolling through his phone, barely registering my words. Halfway through, I stopped. He didn't notice. He grabbed a beer, muttered, "Sorry, what did you just say?" The kind automatic response when someone hasn't been listening at all, and walked into his office, closing the door. My mom was fine, by the way, but Timothy never asked. Not that night. Not ever. The distance between us grew. Timothy gave me the I don't care attitude. My emotional needs weren't met. Our intimacy went from a few times a week to a few times a month to maybe once every 6 weeks. It felt mechanical, obligatory, emotionless. When I tried to initiate it more often, Timothy always had an excuse. When I finally tried to discuss it, hoping for honesty or reassurance, he shut me down. He blamed it on work, stress, and exhaustion. Then he dismissed me. I felt in my marriage. I was married but living like a single lady because we basically live like roommates, not couples. Maybe I should have left, but I didn't. I stayed glued to the marriage, hoping that someday Timothy would change and treat me the sweet way he used to at the initial stage of our relationship. I got smaller and quieter. I stopped talking about my day because he didn't ask. I stopped suggesting date nights for just the both of us because he would just say he was too busy. I stopped asking him about his work because his answers were always vague and distracted. Stopped talking unless he asked me a direct question, which became less and less frequent until sometimes we would go entire evenings without saying more than 10 words to each other. I learned to exist around him instead of with him. I press my phone or watch television to pass time and kill the loneliness that had crept into life. And then, about 16 months ago, I came across something that changed my course and took me out of loneliness. I was scrolling through social media that night when an ad popped up. Learn Japanese. Free trial. Master a new language in minutes a day. I almost scrolled past it, but something made me stop. It took me back to college before I met Timothy when I studied Japanese for a semester. Learning the language had a lasting impact on me. I was drawn to its structure and precision, and it challenged the way I thought and communicated. It opened my mind to a different culture and left an impression that stayed with me long after that chapter of my life ended. I clicked the ad, and I downloaded the app just out of curiosity, just to see if I remembered anything. Surprisingly, I remembered more than I expected. The hiragana came back easily, then the katakana. I did the first lesson right there in bed, then the second. And for the first time in months, maybe years, I felt something other than sadness or anger or loneliness. I felt interested, engaged, and alive. That night, lying in bed with my earbuds while David stayed in his office downstairs, I took 2 lessons, learned some vocabulary and grammar patterns, and felt my brain wake up in a way it hadn't in years. I became hooked. I just knew I had found something that made me feel like myself again. And that was the beginning of everything. The weeks that followed became a rhythm. Timothy would come home, disappear into his office or zone out in front of the TV, and I would sit at the kitchen table or lie on the bed in my bedroom with my earbuds, working through lessons. I subscribed to the premium version of the app. I listened to podcasts during my commute to work, started watching Japanese dramas with subtitles, and over time, I understood it better and stopped watching with subtitles. About 3 months in, I realized the app could only take me so far. I could recognize words, follow conversations, even think in simple sentences, but I needed correction, real feedback, someone who would stop me when I got lazy or sloppy. That was when I hired a tutor. I found her through an online platform. Her name was Lee May, a woman in her early 40s who'd moved to the States from Shanghai 15 years ago. Her profile said she was fluent in Mandarin, Japanese, and English, and she specialized in conversation practice. Lee May and I settled into a routine. 2 sessions a week, sometimes 3. She pushed me hard, wouldn't let me get away with lazy pronunciation or half-remembered grammar. She was also encouraging, celebrating when I finally nailed a difficult particle or remembered a complex kanji character. I did not tell Timothy, not because I was hiding anything, but because I had learned what happened when I shared things that mattered to me. Last year, I mentioned that I wanted to learn baking, not casually, but seriously, taking time to understand it and get better. He laughed it off and asked what use it would be, reminding me that it would not bring in money or change anything. There was no encouragement, only dismissal. After that, I stopped explaining myself. I already knew learning Japanese would be treated the same way, as something unimportant. So I kept it to myself. Learning Japanese became my little secret, my private world where I was competent, growing, and learning something new every day. I practiced for 2 or 3 hours every day. After about 8 months, I could understand everyday Japanese with ease. I was good. My vocabulary was superb. I could follow films, read short books, listen to podcasts, and have meaningful conversations with my private tutor. Learning Japanese brought back a part of me I had set aside for years. Each new word and each grammar I grasped reminded me that I was still growing, still learning, still more than just Timothy's wife. What I didn't know was that learning Japanese was preparing me for the dinner that would expose why my husband gives me cold shoulder and who he actually was. I was in the bedroom folding laundry that Tuesday evening when Timothy came home looking very happy and humming a song. I hadn't seen him that happy in months. When he opened the door downstairs, his footsteps came up the stairs. That was unusual. Normally he would go straight to the kitchen for a beer or to his office to check a few emails that would turn into 3 hours of work. But tonight I heard him coming up, taking the steps 2 at a time from the sound of it. He appeared in the doorway. I glanced up briefly, just enough to acknowledge his presence, and went back to folding the clothes. "Hey," he said. "Hi," I replied as I set the folded shirt on the growing pile and reached for another one. "You're home early," I said, not looking at his face. "Rebecca, I have great news for you. For us. My company is close to finalizing a major partnership that's worth over $50 million with a Japanese tech company. This is a huge partnership, and its success would put me on the radar for promotions and elevate my career. The CEO, Yudo, will be visiting next Thursday, and I will be taking him to dinner at Sushi Gen. You need to come." I looked up from the clothes I was folding, unsure of what I heard. "Business dinner?" I asked. "Yeah, Rebecca. Here's the thing. Yudo's assistant called me earlier this week to confirm a few details, including my marital status." My hands paused for just a second before continuing with the fold. "That's an odd question for a business call." "Not really," he replied. "In Japanese business culture, family is often seen as a signal of character, stability, and social responsibility. They want to know that the people they partner with are solid, reliable, grounded, and focused on the long-term commitment, not likely to let personal issues spill into business or abandon responsibilities." "Okay," I said, looking at him to know what he had to say next. So I told him yes, that I had been married 15 years, and my marriage is very stable. He smiled at me like we were in on some joke together. "Which means you need to come to the dinner. I know it's not really your scene, but it's important. It's just one evening. You just need to be there. Dress well, smell nice, and look charming. You know how to do that." It was clear to me now. My presence wasn't about me at all. It was about appearances. I was quietly supporting the image of a stable, respectable household. "Sure, of course. Which date?" I asked. "Next week, Wednesday at 7 p.m. He replied. "That navy dress, the one with the sleeves. It looks conservative but elegant. And Rebecca," he turned towards me looking serious. "Yudo doesn't speak much English. I mean, he knows enough for basic small talk, but his assistant said he is much more comfortable in Japanese, which works out fine because I'm pretty fluent at this point. During the business talk, you will probably be pretty bored, but just smile through it." The socks slipped out of my hands. I bent down to pick them up from the floor, grateful for a reason to hide my face for a second. "You speak Japanese?" I kept my voice casual and mildly interested. "Yeah." I could hear the pride in his voice without even looking at him. I had been working on it for the past few years. I started with the basics when we first started talking to the Tokyo office, but I've gotten pretty serious about it lately, taking online classes, practicing with native speakers on the team. I'm good enough now to handle business negotiations in Japanese. That's one of the reasons I was chosen to meet up with him. I rolled the socks together and added them to his pile, reached for another pair. "I had no idea you were learning a language." He chuckled a bit and said, "Well, it's not exactly dinner table conversation, is it? It's just a work thing. Something I needed for the job. Just a work thing. Like everything else in his life that he never bothered to share with me. He didn't ask if I spoke the language. He didn't wonder if I might be interested or even curious. In his mind, I was simply the wife who would smile, nod, and look the part while the important people talked. So The whole dinner will be in Japanese. I asked. We will start the conversation in English, probably the introductions, that sort of thing. But once we get into actual business, we will switch to Japanese. I know that's not ideal for you. You'll probably be pretty bored. Honestly. But it's important that you're there. The optics matter in this kind of deal. The optics. That's what I was. A visual element to make him look stable and trustworthy. I understand, I said without looking at him. I really appreciate this, Rebecca. He came over and put his hand on my shoulder, a gesture that might have felt affectionate if it didn't feel so perfunctory. I know these things aren't fun for you, but it's just a few hours. I am really working hard for us. You know, my ability to speak Japanese is one of the reasons they're considering me for the VP position. Not many executives here can negotiate in Japanese. This position comes with better salary and better benefits. It's worth one boring dinner, right? I didn't respond. Instead, I thought aloud. Timothy said, he is working hard for us. Like my sitting silently at a table while he conducted business in a language I supposedly didn't understand was somehow beneficial to both of us. He squeezed my shoulder once and let go. Oh, one more thing. Japanese business dinners can be pretty formal. Lots of etiquette and protocol. Just follow my lead and you'll be fine. Follow his lead. Like I was a child who needed guidance on how to behave in public. I can do that, I said. Great. He was already heading for the door, probably going downstairs to his office or to watch TV or to do any of the 100 things that were more important than staying in the same room with his wife. I've got a few calls to make. What's for dinner? I haven't started anything yet. I said, okay, let me know when it's ready. And then he was gone. I heard his footsteps on the stairs, heard the sound of his office door closing, and I was alone again with the laundry. I sat down on the bed, right on top of the pile of his folded shirts, and stared at the wall. That dinner was more than an obligation. It was an unexpected window, a chance to hear Timothy in a context he thought I didn't understand, to observe how he presented himself, how he spoke about business, and how our marital life existed in his words when he assumed I wasn't listening. Thursday, 9 days from now. 9 days until I sat at a table with Timothy and a stranger from Tokyo and pretended to be exactly what my husband needed me to be: decorative, appropriate, and silent. 9 days until I listened to him speak Japanese and understood every single word while he believed I was sitting there clueless and bored. Part of me felt guilty for even thinking this way, but a bigger part of me, the part that felt increasingly invisible in my own marriage, wanted to know, needed to know. People always revealed their true selves when they thought no one was listening, when they thought they were speaking in a private language. And my husband, the man who had stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as an accessory, he definitely had truths he would only say when he thought I couldn't hear them. I needed to get fully ready, fully prepared. I finished refolding the shirts and stacked them neatly on his side of the closet. Then I pulled out my phone and chatted with Lee May, my private tutor. I need extra sessions this week. I typed, as many as you can fit in. Something came up. Her response came within a minute. Of course. What's going on? I stared at the question. How did I explain this? How did I tell her that my husband had just invited me to a business dinner where he would be speaking Japanese, not knowing that I had spent the last 8 months learning the same language, that I needed to be absolutely certain I could understand every word, every nuance, every subtle implication? Nothing serious. I have a business meeting to attend, and I need intensive practice. Business Japanese, formal conversation, polite speech patterns, and I need to focus on listening comprehension. Can you do it tomorrow evening? And maybe a few more times this week. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. works. And I can do Thursday afternoon if that helps. Thursday afternoon, hours before the dinner. Perfect. That would be perfect. I typed, thank you, Lee May. Always. See you tomorrow. I set my phone down and looked around the bedroom. Everything was clean, organized in its place. The laundry was folded and put away. The bed was made. The surfaces were dusted. Everything looked perfect from the outside, just like my marriage. I met with Lee May every night that week, sometimes twice a day, when I could swing it during my lunch break. We'd sit on video chat, her patient face on my laptop screen, and she'd drill me on business vocabulary, formal speech patterns, and the subtle distinctions in Kigo that could change the entire meaning of a sentence. We spent another hour practicing. She would speak to me in formal Japanese, the way business executives spoke to each other, and I would translate it back in English. By the end, my brain felt like it had been wrung out like a wet towel, but I was ready. I was as ready as I was going to be. I wasn't going to speak Japanese at that dinner. I was going to sit there quietly, smiling politely, looking like the bored wife Timothy expected me to be. But I was going to understand every single word. Timothy had no idea what was coming. No idea that the wife he'd dismissed and ignored and treated like a decorative object had been building something he couldn't see. The week moved in a strange rhythm. And then D-Day finally came. I woke up before my alarm. Timothy was already gone. He'd left early for some pre-meeting with his team, preparing for the evening. I lay in bed for a while, staring at the navy dress hanging on the outside of the closet door, where I had left it all week. Conservative, elegant, appropriate, the perfect costume for a perfect and clueless wife. I went through my morning routine on autopilot. I took my shower and drank my coffee. I drove to work, and by 3 p.m., I left. I told my manager I had an appointment. She waved me off without asking questions. At home, I had 3 hours before we needed to leave. 3 hours to get ready for a dinner that felt less like a social event and more like walking into battle. I started with a bath. Not a quick shower, but an actual bath with the expensive bath salts I'd gotten for Christmas 2 years ago and never used. I needed to be calm, needed to settle the buzzing anxiety that had taken up residence in my chest. While I soaked, I practiced breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The way they taught you in yoga classes and meditation apps. I wasn't trying to empty my mind. That would be impossible, but I was trying to quiet it enough that I could think clearly. At 5 o'clock, I got out and started getting ready. Hair first. I blow-dried it straight, the way Timothy preferred. No curls, no volume, just smooth and neat and unremarkable. Then I applied makeup, just a little foundation, a little blush, neutral eyeshadow, and mascara. Nothing too dramatic. Nothing that would draw attention. I wanted to look put together, but forgettable. At 5:30, I pulled the navy dress off its hanger. It looked exactly the same as it had 2 years ago when I bought it. Same conservative cut, same 3/4 sleeves, same hem that hit just below my knees. The kind of dress that said, "I'm here, but I'm not trying to be noticed." I stepped into it and zipped it up. I looked at myself in the mirror. I looked like Timothy's wife, like the appropriate accessory he needed for this dinner, like exactly what he expected me to be. Perfect. I added simple jewelry, pearl earrings, a delicate necklace, both gifts from Timothy from years ago, back when he still put thought into presents. I slipped on low heels, the comfortable kind you could wear for hours without your feet screaming. At 6 o'clock, I heard Timothy come home. He glanced at me as he headed for the closet and said I look nice. The dress is a perfect choice for this dinner. He pulled out his navy blue suit, almost matching my dress, started changing quickly, efficiently. He was in work mode, focused. Whatever nervousness he might have felt about this dinner, he wasn't showing it. "We need to leave in 15 minutes, he said, buttoning his shirt. "Traffic's going to be bad. I'm ready whenever you are." I replied. At 6:15 exactly, we headed downstairs. Timothy grabbed his keys, his phone, checked his reflection one more time in the hall mirror. I picked up my small purse, the black one I use for formal events, just big enough for my phone, my ID, a credit card, and lip gloss. We walked out to the car. The drive into the city took 40 minutes. Traffic was heavy but moving. Timothy had the radio on low, some classical station that he claimed helped him think. He didn't try to make conversation, just drove, occasionally tapping his fingers on the steering wheel in time with whatever symphony was playing. I looked out the window and practiced staying calm, practiced the phrases I might need if anyone spoke to me directly in English. Practiced keeping my face neutral and pleasant. Practiced being exactly what Timothy expected me to be. We hit the city right at 7. Timothy navigated through the downtown streets with the confidence of someone who'd made this drive 100 times. We found the restaurant, Sushi Gen, on a quieter street lined with upscale establishments. Minimalist storefronts, valet parking, the kind of place where you needed a reservation weeks in advance. He pulled up to the valet stand. A young man in a black uniform approached the car. "Good evening, sir," he said, opening Timothy's door. "Reservation under," Timothy said, handing over the keys. "Of course, Mr. Timothy. Enjoy your evening." I got out on my side before anyone could open the door for me. The evening air was cool, a light breeze coming off the bay. I smoothed down my dress and waited while Timothy came around the car and leaned closer to me, whispering the warning, "Only me cold here. Remember, just be pleasant. Don't try to participate in the business talk. If Yudo addresses you in English, keep your answers brief. We need him focused on the partnership, not distracted by small talk." I nodded. Then he offered me his arm, a gesture he almost never made anymore, but apparently one he remembered for formal occasions. I took it, and we walked toward the entrance together. Timothy had hired a private room, which felt smaller once we stepped inside. Yudo was already seated when we arrived. He stood to greet us, a man in his mid-50s with silver-rimmed glasses and an impeccably charcoal-tailored suit, probably worth more than everything in my closet combined. Timothy bowed, slightly. I followed his lead. They exchanged greetings in Japanese, formal and polite. I smiled, looking appropriately lost, and slid into the chair Timothy pulled out for me. A server appeared, a young woman in a simple black uniform. She bowed and poured water for each of us from a ceramic pitcher, the sound of liquid filling the cups the only noise in the quiet room. "May I get you something to drink?" she asked in careful English. "Sake, please," Yudo said. Timothy immediately followed suit. "Yes, sake for me as well." They both looked at me. "Green tea, please," I said. The server bowed again and disappeared, sliding the door closed behind her with barely a whisper of sound. "So," Timothy said, leaning forward slightly to Yudo, "I wanted to thank you again for making the trip out here. I know it's a significant journey from Tokyo." Yudo waved a hand graciously. "Not at all. When a potential partnership has this much promise, the distance is irrelevant. And I wanted to meet you in person, Timothy-san. In Japan, we believe that business relationships are built on trust and understanding between people, not just numbers on a contract." "Absolutely," Timothy agreed, nodding enthusiastically. "That's exactly how I approach business as well. Trust is everything." I almost laughed. Trust. What did Timothy know about trust? The server returned with our drinks. The sake arrived in a beautiful ceramic set, a small flask and 2 matching cups with a subtle blue glaze. My tea came in a delicate cup with no handle, still steaming. Yudo lifted his sake cup to new beginnings. Timothy raised his as well, to a successful partnership. They drank. I sipped my tea carefully, the heat almost burning my lips, and said nothing. For the next 20 minutes, they talked in English. The conversation was all business, technical specifications, implementation timelines, the scope of the partnership Timothy's company was proposing. Timothy was good at this part, I had to admit. He knew his subject matter inside and out, spoke with confidence without being condescending, asked thoughtful questions. This was the Timothy other people saw. The competent executive, the reliable colleague, the man you'd want leading your project. It bore almost no resemblance to the man I lived with. The first course arrived. Small, beautiful plates of delicate appetizers, some kind of fish garnished with things I couldn't identify, arranged like tiny works of art. The server explained each dish in accented English, but I was only half listening. Because I was watching Yudo. He was polite, engaged, asking good questions. But there was something else I noticed, the way his eyes would drift to me occasionally, like he was trying to figure something out. Not in a creepy way, but with a kind of careful attention that made me think he was reading the dynamics between Timothy and me. Could he tell something was off? Could he see the distance between us, The way we sat just a little too far apart. The way Timothy hadn't really looked at me since we'd sat down. Then he turned his attention more fully to me. Rebecca-san, Timothy mentioned you work in marketing. What kind of marketing do you do? I opened my mouth to answer, but Timothy jumped in before I could get a word out. Rebecca works at a smaller firm, he said, his tone casual and dismissive in a way that made my chest tighten. Digital marketing, mostly. Social media, email campaigns. Nothing too complex, like I was too simple to handle anything sophisticated. I had worked in marketing for 15 years, had managed successful campaigns, built client relationships, but he just dismissed my entire career as a way to keep busy. I saw something flicker across Yudo's face, just for a fraction of a second, before his expression smoothed back into polite interest. But I'd seen it, a tightening around his eyes, a slight stiffening of his posture. He didn't like what Timothy had just said. Or maybe he didn't like the way Timothy had said it. Marketing is vital work, Yudo said, looking directly at me instead of Timothy. Especially in the digital space. The landscape changes so quickly. It requires constant learning and adaptation. Thank you, I said quietly. I try to stay current with the trends. Timothy was already moving the conversation back to business. Anyway, Yudo-san, I wanted to discuss the technical integration timeline. But Yudo interrupted gently. Of course. Though perhaps we should switch to Japanese for a more detailed discussion, I find I can express the nuances more clearly in my native language, and I understand you speak Japanese quite well, Timothy-san. Timothy's face lit up. This was what he'd been waiting for, the chance to show off his language skills, to prove he was the kind of executive who'd gone the extra mile to learn his client's language. That would be excellent, Timothy said. My Japanese isn't perfect, but I'm comfortable with business discussions. Yudo glanced at me. I apologize, Rebecca-san. I'm afraid the next part of our conversation may be quite boring for you. Please don't worry about me, I said with what I hoped was a gracious smile. I understand this is a business dinner. You two should talk freely. Timothy actually looked relieved. See, I told you she wouldn't mind. And just like that, they switched to Japanese. Yudo-san, Timothy began, his Japanese smooth and confident. I'm very glad we can speak more directly now. English is fine for basic conversation, but there are nuances that are difficult to express. I adjusted a bit. This was the moment I had been preparing for all week. Yudo nodded. Your Japanese is quite good, Timothy-san. How long have you been studying? About 2 years, seriously, Timothy replied, a note of pride in his voice. I started when we first began discussions with Japanese partners. I believe in going the extra mile. If I'm going to do business in your world, I should speak your language. I sat quietly, taking small bites of each course as it arrived, sipping my tea, and keeping my face pleasantly blank like a wife who had no idea what was being said around her. But I understood almost every word, let's say 80%. Timothy's Japanese was good, better than I'd expected, honestly. But it wasn't perfect. He made small errors in particle usage and occasional mistakes with honorific levels. Nothing that prevented communication, but enough that a native speaker would notice. Yudo was gracious about it, never correcting him directly, just modeling the correct forms in his own responses. Halfway through the third course, something shifted. Yudo had just finished explaining his company's philosophy about long-term partnerships, about building relationships that lasted beyond a single contract. And then he said something that changed the entire tone of the evening. Timothy-san, I'm curious. How do you balance such ambitious career goals with your personal life? In my experience, that balance can be quite challenging. It was a personal question dressed up as professional small talk, an invitation to move beyond pure business into something more human. And Timothy took it. He answered immediately, casual, almost proud. Honestly, I'm very fortunate. My wife is extremely low maintenance. She doesn't really get the business world. She's satisfied with her quiet, uncomplicated life. I make all the big decisions, the money, the career moves, the strategy. She's mostly just there, keeps the house in order, and looks presentable at dinners like this. Convenient. I don't have to deal with her needing attention, asking questions, or chasing her own ambitions. She exists in the background, exactly as I need her to. I kept my hands steady around my teacup, took a slow sip, low maintenance. That's how he sees me. Simple, undemanding, unambitious. Yudo made a small sound. Not quite agreement, not quite disagreement. I see. Is she content with this arrangement? Very content, Timothy said without hesitation. His voice carried certainty, the kind that left no room for contradiction. Rebecca understands that my career requires dedication and focus. She's very supportive. She doesn't ask questions or need constant reassurance. She's just there, stable, reliable, exactly what I need. Just there, like furniture, useful, quiet, unnoticed, someone present but not a person. I took another bite of food and chewed slowly. Across the table, I could see Yudo's face in my peripheral vision. His expression had gone very still, very careful. That sounds quite convenient, Yudo said, and there was something in his tone now, something cooler. But Timothy didn't seem to notice. He was too busy talking. It really is, he continued in Japanese, and he was almost chatty now, like he was bonding with Yudo over the challenges of being an ambitious man. I have colleagues whose wives are constantly starting businesses or taking classes or demanding to be involved in every decision. It creates stress and creates complications. I'm grateful Rebecca isn't like that. She's content with her simple life. She manages the home and presents well at functions like this. It works for me and lets me handle the important things, finances, career planning, major decisions. It's honestly ideal. I don't have to worry about a wife who demands attention or lets her own ambitions interfere with mine. Content with my simple life. I wondered if he realized how he sounded. If he had any awareness at all that he was objectifying his wife and describing her like someone without ambitions, a convenient appliance, someone who is supportive but invisible. I glanced at Yudo again. His face was perfectly polite, but his eyes had gone cold. Something about what Timothy was saying was bothering him. A lot. And you handle all the household finances yourself? Yudo asked, his tone carefully neutral. All of it, Timothy confirmed. Rebecca has no head for money. She's just not interested in that kind of thing. So I manage everything. Our accounts, investments, and planning for the future. It's easier that way. She trusts me to make the right decisions. She trusts me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Yudo took a slow sip of his sake. I see. And these financial plans, they include your wife's input, her goals. Timothy laughed a little, like the question was naive. Rebecca doesn't really have financial goals. She's happy as long as the bills are paid and she has what she needs. I'm the one thinking about long-term strategy. He said it so casually, like it was perfectly normal for one person in a marriage to handle everything while the other person just existed in blissful ignorance. Like it was perfectly normal to make all the decisions about your shared future without consulting your partner. The fourth course arrived. Something beautiful with fish and vegetables arranged in a way that looked almost too perfect to eat. I stared at it and felt nothing. Yudo was watching me again. I could feel it even though I wasn't looking directly at him. I kept my face neutral, kept my hands steady, and kept playing the role of the wife who didn't understand. But something was happening. Something was shifting in the room. Yudo wasn't asking business questions anymore. He was testing something. He wants to know who Timothy is beyond his profession and children. Yudo asked, his voice still carefully polite. Do you and Rebecca-san plan to have a family? I felt every muscle in my body tense. Timothy made a dismissive sound. No, that's not really in the cards for us. Rebecca's 40 now, getting a bit old for that. And honestly, with where I am in my career, children would just be a complication I don't need. A complication. I stared at my plate, breathed slowly through my nose. We'd never decided not to have children. I wanted them, had brought it up multiple times over the years, saying maybe it was time to start trying. And Timothy had always deflected. Not the right time. Too much going on at work. Maybe next year. I'd thought we were postponing. Apparently, Timothy had decided we were never having them at all. And I was only finding this out now, sitting in a restaurant, listening to him tell a stranger about our family planning in a language he thought I didn't understand. I see, Yudo said, and his voice had gone very flat. That's quite definitive. Does Rebecca-san share this view? She's fine with it, Timothy said breezily. Like I said, she's very accommodating, very easy. She doesn't push for things or make demands. It's one of the qualities I value most about her. She doesn't create problems. Because I'd learned that creating problems, expressing needs, having wants, asking for anything, just led to being dismissed, being made to feel like I was being unreasonable. So I'd stopped asking, stopped wanting, and apparently, Timothy valued that, valued my silence, my absence of expectations. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand up and flip the table and tell him exactly what I thought of being described as easy and accommodating. Like those were the highest compliments a wife could receive. But I didn't. I sat there, ate my food, sipped my tea, and listened. Because they weren't done yet. Across the table, Yudo set down his chopsticks very carefully. Timothy-san, may I speak frankly? Of course, Timothy said, still oblivious to the fact that the temperature in the room had dropped about 20 degrees. In Japanese, Yudo said slowly and precisely, we believe that a true partnership, in business or in marriage, requires mutual respect, requires both parties to have a voice, to be seen and heard. Timothy nodded along like he agreed. Absolutely. Mutual respect is essential. And yet, Yudo continued, his tone still perfectly polite, but with an edge now that even Timothy couldn't miss. From what you've described, it sounds less like a partnership and more like a do like I say arrangement, a convenient arrangement, where one person makes all the decisions and the other person simply accommodates. There was silence. I could see Timothy trying to figure out if he'd just been criticized, or if this was still friendly conversation. I wouldn't say it like that, Timothy said, a little defensive now. Rebecca and I have a good relationship. She's happy. We work well together. Do you? Yudo asked quietly. The question hung in the air. Timothy laughed uncomfortably. Of course we do. I mean, we've been married for 15 years. We're very stable. Stability and happiness are not always the same thing, Yudo said, and then he did something that made my heart stop. He turned to me, looked directly at me, and spoke in English. Rebecca-san, I hope you are enjoying the meal? It was a simple question, a polite question, but the way he asked it, the way he looked at me, it felt like he was asking something else entirely. It's wonderful, I said, keeping my voice light. Everything has been delicious. I'm glad. He held my gaze for just a moment longer than necessary, and in that moment, I saw something in his eyes. A question, a concern. There was something in the way he was looking at me that made me think he saw more than Timothy gave him credit for. Timothy cleared his throat. Should we discuss this partnership and implementation timeline? He said in Japanese, clearly trying to steer the conversation back to safer territory. Yudo turned back to him. Yes, of course. I would love to know more about your career goals. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? 10 years? The tone of Yudo's voice when he asked Timothy this question showed that something had changed. The warmth that had been in his voice at the beginning of the evening was gone. He was still polite, still professional, but there was a distance now. A coolness. And Timothy, oblivious as ever, just kept talking. His face lit up. This was his favorite subject. Himself, his ambitions, his future. In 5 years, I want to be VP, he said in Japanese. That's the immediate goal. This partnership with your company should secure that for me. And after that, I'm looking at executive leadership. COO, maybe CEO eventually. I've been positioning myself strategically, building the right relationships and making the right moves. That's quite ambitious, Yudo said. It requires sacrifice. Timothy agreed. And planning. I've been careful about setting things up financially so that when the right opportunity comes, I can move quickly. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What kind of planning? Yudo asked. There was a pause. I could feel Timothy weighing whether to say more, whether to reveal something he'd been keeping quiet. And then, without any warning, without any sense that what he was about to say was wildly inappropriate, Timothy said something that made the bottom drop out of my stomach. To be honest, Yudo-san, I am motivated by some personal financial planning I've been doing, he said in Japanese, his tone almost conspiratorial now. Like they were friends sharing secrets. I've been restructuring some assets, moving money to offshore accounts, Hong Kong mostly. You know, some international options have better tax advantages. It gives me more flexibility, more control. If this VP position comes through, I want to be positioned to make quick moves without being tied down by complicated joint account situations. My hands were shaking. I set down my teacup very, very carefully. He had been moving our money to accounts in Hong Kong that I didn't know about without flexibility and telling me. Yudo's face had gone completely blank. You're moving marital assets without your wife's knowledge? Is she aware of these financial arrangements? Not without her knowledge, exactly, Timothy said. And he had the audacity to laugh a little. I mean, technically she could ask about it if she wanted to, but Rebecca had never been interested in money management anyway. She's content to let me handle it. She signs whatever I put in front of her without reading it. It's easier this way. I can move quickly when I need to. Honestly, it's better this way. Moreover, if I allowed Rebecca to manage our finances, she'd probably just get confused with the details. So, she trusts me to make the right decisions. I couldn't breathe. Yudo was staring at Timothy, like he was seeing him for the first time. Timothy-san, I'm not sure you understand how that sounds. But Timothy was on a roll now, completely missing the warning in Yudo's tone. He continued, I know it might seem unusual from an American perspective, but it's just practical planning. If I need to relocate for a position, or if circumstances change, I need flexibility. Can't have everything tied up in joint accounts where I need 2 signatures for every transaction. Moreover, I am the one who manages our finances, and Rebecca trusts me to make the right decision. God, my head felt like it was exploding. Jesus, did I trust Timothy? I asked myself. Yes, I had. For 15 years, I'd trusted him. Signed whatever he put in front of me, never questioned. I had assumed that my husband was managing our finances with our shared future in mind. And all this time, he had been moving assets to foreign accounts I didn't know about, preparing for major life changes without discussing them with me, setting things up so he could act quickly without needing me to sign off, setting things up so he could leave me with nothing. I felt sick, really sick, but I kept sitting there like the clueless wife he thought I was. I kept listening to him show his ignorance and foolishness in the name of professionalism. Yudo asked about stress management. How did Timothy handle the pressure of such an ambitious career path? Timothy smiled. Honestly, he said in Japanese, and his voice had taken on that casual, almost bragging quality that made me want to scream. I have an outlet. Yudo opened his mouth, clearly about to say something, but Timothy was still talking. I've been managing some stress through, well, a relationship with someone at work. Delilah, from our finance department. We've been seeing each other for about 6 months now. This has not only made me more productive, but it has also made me more relaxed and organized at work. The room went absolutely silent. I felt my heart beat faster than normal. God, I don't know how I kept sitting there. I don't know how my hands didn't shake, how my face didn't crack, or how I didn't stand up and flip the table and scream until my voice gave out. 6 months. He'd been sleeping with someone from his office for 6 months. While I'd been folding his laundry and making his dinners and learning his language in secret, thinking maybe I could save our marriage, he'd been with someone else. Someone named Delilah, who understood his ambitions. And he had just told a stranger. A business partner. Like it was nothing. Like I was nothing. Like our 15-year-old marriage was so meaningless that he could casually mention his affair over dinner, safe in the belief that his stupid, simple wife couldn't understand the words coming out of his mouth. Across the table, Yudo had gone very still. Not the polite stillness of someone listening attentively. This was something else. Something colder. His face remained perfectly composed. I think years of Japanese business culture had probably trained him never to show shock or anger openly. But I could see it in his eyes. In the way his hand had tightened just slightly around his sake cup. In the way his jaw had set. He was furious. Timothy didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He was too busy talking, too comfortable in his assumption that he was bonding with Yudo over the challenges of being an ambitious man. Timothy was completely oblivious to the fact that he'd just destroyed any chance of this partnership, and quite possibly his entire career. Delilah has really been a godsend, Timothy continued in Japanese, oblivious to the fact that Yudo's expression had gone from warm to glacial. She gets what it takes to succeed in this industry. The long hours, the sacrifices, and the focus. Rebecca just doesn't operate on that level, you know? She is content with her simple routine. But Delilah, she challenges me, makes me think bigger. It's refreshing having someone more younger, succulent, who can ease the stress off your body. It's exhausting living with someone whose biggest contribution to the evening is asking what we're eating for dinner. No vision, no depth, no real conversation. Just noise. Delilah reminds me of who I am supposed to be. I kept my eyes down, staring at the beautiful food on my plate that I couldn't taste anymore. My heart was beating so hard, I was certain they could both hear it. This was the same man who dismissed every attempt at conversation with later, and I'm busy, who shut down discussions before they began, who confused the silence he enforced with the silence he claimed I chose. My work as a marketer had trained me to see through narratives like this. I understood positioning, messaging, and the quiet power of reframing reality. I had spent years in marketing, analyzing behavior, reading between lines, anticipating motives, and turning complex information into strategy. I knew the difference between intellectual incompatibility and deliberate exclusion. What he was describing wasn't my limitation. It was his justification. Yudo set down his sake cup with deliberate care. Timothy-san, he said, and his voice had changed. The warmth was gone. What remained was polite, but cold, the kind of cold that came from barely controlled anger. I'm curious about something. Timothy looked up, still not reading the room. Of course. What would you like to know? You speak very freely about your personal life. Yudo said slowly, each word measured. About your marriage, your finances, your other relationships. Do you often discuss such matters with business associates? There was something in his tone. A warning, a test. Timothy laughed it off. I believe in being authentic, Yudo-san. Building real relationships, not just transactional ones. I'm showing you who I am as a person, not just as an executive. I see. Yudo's expression didn't change. And who you are as a person is someone who moves marital assets without his wife's knowledge, conducts affairs with colleagues, and speaks of his spouse with contempt. The word hung in the air like a blade. Timothy's smile faltered. I wouldn't say contempt. What would you say? Yudo interrupted, his voice still quiet but with an edge now that even Timothy couldn't miss. You have spent the last 30 minutes describing your wife as simple, ignorant, passive, and essentially worthless except for her ability to make you look stable to people like me. If that is not contempt, what is it? Timothy's face had started to change color. From the confident flush of someone who thought they were winning to someone who is uncertain. I think you're misunderstanding. I was just being honest about the dynamics of our relationship. Oh, I understand perfectly. Yudo replied, picking up his water glass instead of his sake. A deliberate choice, I thought. A signal that the friendly portion of the evening was over. You view your marriage as a convenience. Your wife is an asset to be managed. Your vows as suggestions rather than commitments. That's not fair. Yudo's eyes were hard now. Let me make sure I understood correctly. You have been moving significant amounts of money to offshore accounts without your wife's knowledge or consent. You have been conducting a sexual relationship with a colleague for half a year. You have been planning a relocation and career change that would fundamentally alter your wife's life. And you have told her none of this. You have dismissed her career, belittled her intelligence, and described her as too passive to even notice her own marriage failing. Have I misunderstood any of this? Timothy opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, then told Yudo, that sounds worse when you put it like that. Does it? Yudo asked softly. Or does it simply sound like what it is? I sat frozen, barely breathing. This was not how I had expected the evening to go. I had expected to sit here and gather information, to hear Timothy's truths, and then figure out what to do with them later. Privately, quietly, I hadn't expected Yudo to confront him. I hadn't expected this stranger to defend me when I hadn't even revealed that I needed defending. Timothy was scrambling now. I could see it, trying to regain his footing, to salvage whatever was left of this meeting. Yudo-san, I think we've gotten off track here. This is a business dinner. My personal life is separate from business. Is it? Yudo set down his water glass. You have spent this entire evening telling me about your personal life, about how you manage your wife, your finances, and your affairs. You brought these topics into our business discussion. And now I must decide whether a man who conducts his personal life with such dishonesty and disrespect is someone I want to do business with. The blood drained from Timothy's face. Wait, what are you saying? Yudo replied calmly. I am saying that character matters. Integrity matters. A man who will lie to and steal from his own wife. What will he do to a business partner when it becomes convenient? I'm not lying or stealing. Moving marital assets without your spouse's knowledge is theft in most jurisdictions, Yudo said flatly. And conducting your entire personal life in secret while your wife believes you are faithful and honest. What would you call that if not lying? Timothy looked like he'd been punched. This is not appropriate. We're here to discuss a partnership, not my marriage. You made your marriage part of this discussion. Yudo said, you chose to reveal your character to me. I am simply responding to what you have shown me. There was a long, terrible silence. I could feel Timothy panicking beside me. Could feel the weight of his realization that he'd just destroyed a $40 million deal by running his mouth. That he had been so comfortable in his assumption of privacy, so confident that I couldn't understand. That he confessed to things he should have kept locked away forever. And Yudo was watching us both now. His gaze moved between Timothy and me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. Then he did something that made my heart stop. He set down his chopsticks and switched to English. Mrs. Rebecca, he said, and his voice was different now, gentler. The coldness he had been using with Timothy was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like concern. I apologize for speaking Japanese so much this evening. Perhaps this has been quite boring for you. It was a question. A simple, polite question that required my answer. But before I could open my mouth to say a word, Timothy started to respond automatically, the way he always did when someone asked me a question. Oh, Rebecca doesn't mind. I spoke over him in Japanese. Not at all, Yudo-sen, I said, and I heard my own voice come out steady and clear, the pronunciation exactly the way Lime had taught me. I found the conversation fascinating. Particularly the parts about flexibility in business ethics and keeping spouses unaware of financial decisions. The room went absolutely silent. I could feel Timothy's head snap toward me and could sense his shock even though I wasn't looking at him. I kept my eyes on Yudo, watching his face. His expression didn't change. Not really, but I saw something flash in his eyes, just for a fraction of a second. Recognition, validation. Something that looked almost like satisfaction. Your Japanese is excellent, Mrs. Rebecca. Yudo said, still in Japanese, his tone warm now in a way it hadn't been for the last half hour. How long have you been studying? 8 months, I replied. My hands folded carefully in my lap to keep them from shaking. I had a wonderful tutor who taught me that knowing yourself is the first battle, and knowing your enemy is the second. Yudo nodded slowly and said, you are a very good student. Beside me, Timothy made a sound. Not quite a word. Something strangled and confused. Rebecca, he said in English, his voice rough. You speak Japanese? Since when? I turned to look at him. This man I had been married to for 15 years. This man had just spent the last 2 hours destroying me in a language he thought was safe. I switched back to Japanese. Let him hear it in the same language he had used to betray me. Since you stopped noticing anything about me at all, I said quietly. Timothy's face had gone from red to white. His mouth opened and closed like he was trying to find words and couldn't. Rebecca, how long have you been learning it? He asked. 8 months. I repeated still in Japanese. I've been studying for 8 months, every lunch break. Every evening while you were locked in your office. Every moment you weren't paying attention. I paused. Which were the best moments? But why didn't you tell me? His voice had gone up slightly. He sounded almost hurt, which would have been funny if it wasn't so insulting. You never asked, I said simply. You never asked me anything, Timothy. You make assumptions and move on. I could see him trying to process this. Trying to work backwards through the entire evening, trying to remember everything he had said in Japanese, everything he'd thought was private. The panic was starting to show on his face now. the realization. Rebecca, some of the things I said tonight, it was just business talk. Exaggerating a little to build rapport. You know how these things work. I know exactly how these things work. I interrupted, still in Japanese. I understood every single word you said. Every confession. Every plan you've been making. Every detail about Delilah. He flinched when I said her name. Rebecca, please let me explain. Explain what? I asked. Explain the offshore accounts. Explain the affair. Explain how you've been trying to relocate the Hong Kong and start a new life without me? Which part would you like to explain first? Timothy looked like he'd been punched. He turned to Yudo, desperate now. Yudo-san, I can explain this. This is just a misunderstanding between my wife and me. It has nothing to do with our business. It has everything to do with our business, Yudo said coldly, back in Japanese. I told you already. Character matters. A man who lies to his wife, who steals from her, who betrays her so casually. This is not a man I trust. This meeting is over, Timothy-san. My company cannot work with a man like you. The finality in Yudo's voice was unmistakable. I stood up carefully, my legs unsteady after sitting for so long. Excuse me, I said in English. I need to use the restroom. Neither of them said anything as I walked to the door, slid it open, and stepped out into the hallway. My hands were shaking now, really shaking. I had held it together at the table and had kept my voice steady and my face composed. But now, alone in the quiet hallway with the door closed behind me, I could feel everything threatening to break through. I found the restroom at the end of the hall, pushed through the door into blessed silence. It was beautiful in the way everything in this restaurant was beautiful. Stone sink, bamboo accents, soft lighting, and a small vase with a single flower on the counter. I gripped the edge of the marble sink and looked at myself in the mirror. I looked the same. Same face. Same hair. Same navy dress. But I wasn't the same person who had walked into this restaurant 2 hours ago. That woman had still been holding on to hope. She'd still been telling herself that maybe things weren't as bad as they seemed. That maybe she was overreacting, being paranoid, and looking for problems that weren't really there. This woman, the one staring back at me from the mirror, she knew the truth now. Had heard it in her husband's own words. Had listened to him describe her as worthless, their marriage as dead, and their future as something that didn't include her. I took a slow breath. Then another. I straightened up. Smoothed down my dress, checked my reflection one more time. Then I walked back out. The hallway was still quiet. I could hear muffled conversation from other private rooms, the soft clink of dishes, and the gentle murmur of the restaurant operating around us. I slid open the door to our room. The atmosphere inside had changed completely. Timothy was standing now, looking pale and shaken. Yudo was also standing, his posture rigid and formal. They both turned when I entered. Rebecca, Timothy started, his voice desperate. We need to talk about this. But Yudo spoke over him, addressing me directly, in English. Mrs. Rebecca, he said, and his voice was kind again. Respectful. I believe this evening has reached its conclusion. I apologize that it has ended this way. You have nothing to apologize for, I said quietly. I think perhaps I do. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card, extended it toward me. I would like you to have this. I took the card carefully. It was elegant and simple. His name and contact information are in both English and Japanese. But there was something else, a second number written on the back in pen, and a name. Koharu-chun, family law attorney, San Francisco. My hands almost started shaking. I gripped the card tighter to keep them still. That is my daughter, Yudo said quietly. She is a lawyer who specializes in helping women navigate difficult situations. International cases, particularly. If you ever need assistance with anything at all, you can contact her. She will help you. I stared at the card, at the name written in careful handwriting. This wasn't random. This wasn't just a nice gesture from a concerned stranger. Yudo knew. Somehow, he knew exactly what kind of situation I was in. Thank you, I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. Yudo nodded. Then he turned to Timothy, and all the warmth vanished from his expression. Timothy-san, he said, switching back to Japanese. I will be frank with you. After what I have heard tonight, both in the content of your words and in your character as they revealed, I cannot in good conscience move forward with a business partnership. A man who treats his wife with such contempt is not a man I trust with my company's interests. Timothy tried to apologize, but Yudo interrupted him. There is nothing more to discuss, he said. I understand perfectly. You are a man who values convenience over integrity and who views people as tools to be used and discarded when they no longer serve your purposes. This is not someone I do business with. I will be recommending to my board that we pursue other partnerships. I wish you well in your future endeavors, but they will not include my company. He turned back to me one more time and bowed, the kind of bow you give someone you honor and respect. Rebecca-san, he said in English, his voice warm again. I wish you strength in the days ahead. I believe you will need it. And then he was gone, leaving Timothy and me alone in the beautiful private room with the remains of our expensive dinner scattered across the table. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Then Timothy exploded. Do you have any idea what you just did? His voice was loud. Now, all the careful control gone. That was a $40 million deal. Rebecca, $40 million. And you just destroyed it. I stared at him. I destroyed it. I asked, yes, you and your secret Japanese lessons. He was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Why would you do this? Why would you learn Japanese and not tell me? Why would you sit there all night and then ambush me like that? Ambush him. I'd sat quietly through 2 hours of him dismantling our marriage, describing me as worthless, confessing to crimes and affairs, and planning my abandonment. And he thought I'd ambushed him. Get your things, I said, my voice steady and calm. We're leaving. Timothy looked like he wanted to argue, but something in my expression must have stopped him. We left the restaurant in silence. The hostess bowed as we passed. The valet brought our car. The beautiful San Francisco evening air was cool on my skin. I got in the passenger seat, buckled my seatbelt, folded my hands in my lap, and waited. Timothy got in on the driver's side, started the engine, pulled out into traffic. The drive home took 40 minutes. 40 minutes of manipulation. 40 minutes of Timothy playing the victim. 40 minutes of Timothy stewing in his anger and panic while I replayed every word of the evening in my head. 40 minutes of telling me how I'd ambushed him, humiliated him, and sabotaged his future. Not once did he say, I cheated on you. Not once did he say, I lied to you. Not once did he say, I planned a life without you. Not once did he say, I am sorry. Instead, he framed himself as the victim and me as the aggressor, like I had committed some unforgivable act by simply understanding the truth. When anger didn't work, he pivoted to emotional manipulation. That switch is so familiar, it almost feels automatic now. The sharp edge softened. His voice lowered. He became calm, reasonable, and almost gentle, like he was talking to a child who didn't fully grasp the situation. He made it look like I was exaggerating the situation. He minimized everything, not by denying it outright, but by shrinking it until it sounded harmless, manageable, forgivable. And then came the subtle insult wrapped in concern. He told me he hadn't shared details because he didn't want to burden me, because I wasn't interested in those kinds of things, because he thought I wouldn't understand. That's how he has always done it, convincing me that exclusion was protection, that dismissal was kindness. By the time he finished talking, the message he tried to pass to me was clear. If I was hurt, it was because I misunderstood. If I was angry, it was because I was emotional. If our marriage was breaking, it was because I couldn't see the bigger picture. And when I didn't respond the way he wanted, when I didn't reassure him, didn't soften, didn't rush to make things okay, he grew restless. He kept pushing me to speak, not because he wanted to hear me, but because silence meant he couldn't control the narrative. He wanted words he could work with, something he could twist, something he could later say I had agreed to. By the time we got home, He apologized, but only for how the night had gone. For his words. For the fallout. Not for what he had done. Not for what he had hidden. Not for the way he had erased me from his life while standing right next to me. I decided not to say a word to him. We pulled into our driveway. Timothy stopped the car, but didn't move to get out. He just sat there, gripping the steering wheel. "I can't believe you did this to me," he said, finally. His voice was quiet now, defeated. I didn't say a word. I have decided never to answer him again. I got out of the car. I walked to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped inside. Machi, our cat, appeared from wherever she had been sleeping, meowing softly, winding around my legs, oblivious of the pain in my heart. I bent down and picked her up, held her warm, soft body against my chest. Timothy was standing in the doorway, looking desperate and lost, but I didn't care. I need to think of a way to handle this situation on the ground. I walked upstairs to our bedroom, and Timothy followed behind me, asking me to give him a listening ear. But I maintained my silence. He stood in the doorway, looking at me. I set Machi gently on the bed, started taking off my jewelry, the pearl earrings, the necklace, set them on the dresser with deliberate care. "Say something." Timothy's voice was loud now, frustrated, angry again. "Anything. Just acknowledge that I'm here." I looked at him. This man I'd been married to for 15 years. This man who I had made myself small for. This man who thought I was too simple, too passive, and too unimportant to matter. This man had no idea what was coming. I walked to the bedroom door. I put my hand on it, and I closed the door in his face. I heard him standing on the other side for a long moment. Then I heard his footsteps, walking away, down the hall to his office. I stood there with my hand still on the doorknob, my whole body shaking now that I was alone. The rage that I'd been holding back during the entire car ride was threatening to explode out of me. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Wanted to go downstairs and flip over his desk and destroy his office the way he had destroyed our marriage. But I didn't. I walked to the closet instead, unzipped the navy dress and let it fall to the floor, stepped out of it and left it there in a puddle. I changed into pajamas, old, soft, and comfortable, sat on the edge of the bed, and finally let myself feel it. All of it. The betrayal, the humiliation, the grief of losing something I had thought was real. But underneath all of that, underneath the hurt and the anger and the shock, something else was growing inside me. I became determined to show Timothy that I am not a powerless woman. I am not the kind of woman who will sit down and watch a man ruin her life. I stood up and walked to the window, looked out at our backyard in the darkness. Downstairs, I could hear Timothy moving around in his office. A clink of glasses. He was drinking. Of course he was. Probably trying to process the disaster of the evening. Probably trying to figure out how to salvage his career, his deal, and his carefully constructed life. Let him drink himself into a stupor. Let him sit down there and panic. I had work to do. I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking again, now that I was alone. I opened my notes app and started typing. Everything I could remember. Every word Timothy had said. Every detail. I typed for 20 minutes, until I had it all down. Every piece of evidence. Then I looked at Yudo's business card. Read the name on the back, properly this time. A lawyer. He had given me the number for a lawyer. Because he had known. He had sat across from Timothy and heard him describe our marriage. And he had known exactly what I would need. I decided to call the number tomorrow. But then, I have a friend who I need to call. Clara Blackstone. She had been my best friend for almost 2 decades until Timothy slowly pushed her out of my life, saying she was a bad influence, and that she didn't understand our marriage. At first, I called her secretly until Timothy caught me one day calling her and warned me to stop, so I did to avoid having issues with Timothy. She is the only person who I have told about the physical and emotional neglect I faced in my home. So she will understand my pain right now because she always does. I dialed her number and pressed call. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Rebecca." Her voice hit me like a wave. "Rebecca, is that you?" Are you okay? I opened my mouth. I tried to speak, found that my throat had closed up. Rebecca? Honey, talk to me. What's wrong? Clara. My voice came out rough, shaky. I need help. I need a hug. Okay, I'm here. What happened? And suddenly it all came pouring out. Everything. The dinner, the Japanese, Timothy's confessions, the affair, the offshore accounts, the plans to leave me, the way he described me as worthless. I told her about learning Japanese in secret, about Delilah, about sitting at that table pretending not to understand while my marriage was dismantled in a language that was supposed to be private. I told her about Yudo walking away from the deal, about the business card he had given me, about the drive home and Timothy's attempts to gaslight me into thinking I'd overreacted. Clara listened to all of it without interrupting. And when I finally ran out of words, when I'd gotten it all out and was sitting there crying quietly, she was silent for a long moment. Then she said, Rebecca, you are a magnificent badass woman. I let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. I don't feel very badass right now. Are you kidding me? You learned an entire language in secret. You kept your cool while your husband confessed to everything. You spoke up at the perfect moment. Rebecca, you're the most badass person I know right now. I feel like I'm falling apart. I replied, you're allowed to fall apart. You just found out your husband is a lying, cheating, stealing piece of shit. You get to feel however you need to feel. Clara's voice was fierce now. But you're also the woman who called me for help, for a hug instead of just accepting what he's done. That takes strength. That shows that you are not a woman who settles for less. I wiped at my eyes with the back of my hand. She continued, Rebecca, I want to ask you a question. Do you want to try to save this marriage? Do you want counseling, reconciliation, all of that? Or are you done? I want to know. I thought about Timothy downstairs, about everything he'd said, about Delilah, about the offshore accounts, about calling me simple and passive and essentially worthless. About 15 years of making myself smaller to fit into the space he'd left for me. I'm done, I said. The words felt good, felt right. I'm completely done. Then that's what we worked toward. Clara's voice was steady and strong. We get you out. We protect you. We make sure he doesn't get away with hiding assets or stealing from you. And we make sure you can start over. Start over. The words felt terrifying and thrilling all at once. How? I asked. How do I even begin? One step at a time, Clara said. First, that business card the Japanese guy gave you. What's on it? I picked it up from where I'd set it on the nightstand. His name and contact information are on the front. On the back, there's a phone number and a name. Koharu Chen, family law attorney, San Francisco. He gave you a divorce lawyer's number, Clara said. I think so, I replied. Rebecca, this man walked away from a $40 million deal because your husband's character disgusted him. And then he gave you the tools to fight back. That's incredible. I don't even know why he did it. I said calmly. Maybe we'll find out. But right now, you need to call that number. Tomorrow. First thing. If she can help you, fine. But if she can't, then we find someone who can. Rebecca, if Koharu specializes in international cases, and this Yudo gave you her number specifically, she's probably exactly what you need. Your husband has been moving money offshore. You need someone who knows how to deal with that. She was right. I really need a good and strong lawyer who will help me win this case. Okay, I said. I'll call her tomorrow. Good. And Rebecca, I want you to call me tomorrow too. Morning, afternoon, or whenever. Just check in. Let me know you're okay. And if you need anything between now and then, anything at all, you call me. I don't care if it's 3 a.m. I will answer your call and listen. Thank you, Clara. My voice broke. Thank you for being a good friend. I'm sorry for the time I stayed away from you. You are always welcome, Clara said gently. Forget about what happened between us. I fully understand. Right now, we focus on getting you through this. Everything else can wait. You're not alone, okay? You have me. You have whoever this Koharu Chen is. And you have yourself. The woman who learned Japanese in 8 months. The woman who kept her composure at that dinner. The woman who's calling for help instead of just accepting defeat. That woman is strong as hell. Rebecca, trust her. I took a shaky breath. Okay. Say it, Clara said. Say I'm strong. Say it. I'm strong. I whispered. Louder. I'm strong. Again. I'm strong. And this time I believed it. Just a little. Damn right you are, Clara said. Now here's what you're going to do. Tonight, you're going to get some rest. I know it's going to be hard, but try. Tomorrow, you're going to call that number. Talk to Koharu-chan. Find out what your options are. And then you're going to call me, and we're going to make a plan. What kind of plan? I asked. The kind that makes sure Timothy doesn't get away with any of this. The kind that protects you and your future. The kind that proves to him and to yourself that you are not simple, not passive, and definitely not someone to be dismissed. Something fierce bloomed in my chest. Okay, I said. Okay, yes. We talked for a few more minutes. Logistics. What to do if Timothy tried to talk to me. How to act normal when everything felt like it was breaking apart. When we finally said goodnight, I felt steadier than I had all evening. For the first time, I wasn't bracing for what Timothy might do next. I was thinking about what I would do. At 8:30 the next morning, after Timothy had gone to work, I dialed Koharu's number. She picked up at the second ring. Koharu-chan. Miss Chun, I started, my voice rough from not sleeping. My name is Rebecca. I was given your number by Yudo. I'm sorry, I don't know his last name. He was at a business dinner last night with my husband. I know who you are. Her voice softened immediately. My father called me this morning. He told me what happened. My father. So Yudo was her father. He told me about the dinner. Koharu continued. About what your husband said. About how you sat there understanding every word while he thought you couldn't. Rebecca, I'm so sorry you had to experience that. Something about the genuine sympathy in her voice made my throat tighten. Thank you, I said. My father also told me to expect your call. He was very worried about you. He wanted me to help however I could. I don't understand why he would. Why a stranger would care this much. Because it happened to me too, she said quietly. 5 years ago, I was married to an American consultant. We lived in San Jose. I thought we had a good marriage. Her voice was steady, but I could hear the old wound underneath. It turned out he had been planning to leave me for years, hiding money, having an affair with my best friend, making arrangements for a future that didn't include me. And when I finally found out, my English wasn't good enough to fight back properly. I lost almost everything. Koharu, I'm so sorry. My father watched it happen. Watched me get destroyed in a system I didn't understand by a man who knew exactly how to manipulate that system. It broke his heart. He felt like he had failed to protect me. She paused. So when he sat at that dinner last night and heard your husband saying the exact same things my ex-husband used to say, calling you simple, saying you didn't understand important things, admitting to affairs and hidden money, he couldn't walk away. He couldn't let it happen to another woman without trying to help. I pressed my hand over my mouth. This stranger's father had walked away from $40 million because he couldn't bear to watch history repeat itself. After my divorce, Koharu continued, I studied English like my life depended on it, and I went to law school, studied American family law specifically, so I could help women like us, women in cross-cultural marriages, women dealing with hidden assets and offshore accounts, women whose husbands thought they were too ignorant or too passive to fight back. Her voice took on an edge. I specialized in proving them wrong. Do you practice in California? I asked. I do, she replied. San Francisco. And Rebecca, if you want my help, you have it. My father has already told me he'll cover all my fees. This won't cost you anything. I couldn't speak, couldn't process this level of kindness from people who owed me nothing. But I need to know, Koharu said gently. What do you want? Some people want to try to save their marriages even after something like this. If you want counseling or reconciliation, I can refer you to people who handle that. But I need to know where your head is. I want out, I said. I'm done. Okay. I heard the sound of a pen clicking. Then we need to talk. Properly. Not on the phone. Can you come to my office today? Today. The sooner we start, the better. Rebecca, from what my father told me, your husband has been planning this for a while. We need to move quickly to protect you. Can you get away? I thought about my calendar. It was Friday. I had called in sick. Timothy thought I'd be at work all day. Yes, I can come. Good. I'm in the financial district. Let me give you the address. I scrambled for a pen and wrote down the information on the back of a grocery receipt. Can you be here by 10? Koharu asked. I looked at the clock. It was almost 9. Yes. Perfect. When you arrive, tell the receptionist you're here to see me. And Rebecca, bring anything you think might be relevant. Bank statements, tax returns, and any documents you have access to. Even if you're not sure if they matter, bring them. Okay. One more thing. Don't tell your husband where you're going. Don't tell anyone. The fewer people who know what you're doing right now, the better. I nodded and told her that I understood. Then she hung up. I sat there for a moment, staring at my phone. Then I moved into action. I called in sick at my office. I ran upstairs, showered, dressed in work clothes, slacks, and a blouse, like I was going to the office. I looked professional and normal. I went to Timothy's office. The door wasn't locked. I knew where he kept the important documents. It was the filing cabinet bottom drawer. Timothy liked orderliness. Anything that mattered was printed, filed, and labeled. Digital copies were never enough for him. That habit made things simple. I opened the filing cabinet and worked through it carefully. Bank statements, tax returns for the last 4 years, investment summaries, our mortgage paperwork. I photographed every page and uploaded them to the secure cloud drive. I worked methodically, careful not to disturb the order too much. Dates, account numbers, transfer histories. I noticed the discrepancies. Our joint savings account had been steadily shrinking. Not all at once, but gradually. 15,000 here, 20,000 there. Enough to avoid triggering alerts, but consistent enough to leave a pattern. Over 6 months, more than $100,000 had been moved. Then I saw accounts I didn't recognize. 3 of them. They showed regular transfers to an offshore bank. Pacific Crest Advisory. Our joint savings had been slowly drained without my knowledge. My chest heightened, but I didn't stop. I kept documenting. Screenshots, photos, every piece of evidence I could lay my hands on. My job was to preserve evidence. I kept going. Property records for places I had never seen. Assets listed only in his name. Accounts I had never been told about. I photographed everything, making sure dates and balances were clear. I found romantic email messages between Timothy and Delilah. Timothy had printed some erotic photos from his hidden affair with Delilah and hid them in financial documents where he thought I might not see. There were photos of dinner tables lit by candles. Weekend getaways at luxurious hotels in the city. Date nights carefully documented. Trips I thought were conferences. Restaurants he never took me to. He was smiling all through them. The smiles he never wore at home. Her hand was on his arm, his body angled toward her in a way I hadn't felt in years. I pulled out the baby monitor I had installed months ago in his office to watch our cat. A chill ran through me. How many conversations had that thing captured? How many phone calls had Timothy made thinking he was completely alone? I had never checked it even once because I had never thought Timothy would do anything illegal. I had always trusted him, but the recent incident had opened my eyes to see how dubious he was. I pulled out my phone and opened the baby monitor app, scrolled through the recordings. There were hundreds of them, months worth of footage. I didn't check them because I was almost late to the appointment with Koharu. I just saved them to my phone, then backed them up to the cloud. My hands were shaking by the time I finished. These were potential evidence of everything. I looked at the time. 9:20. I had 40 minutes to get to San Francisco. The drive into the city took 35 minutes. Friday morning traffic was lighter than I expected. I found parking in a garage 2 blocks from the address Koharu had given me. The building was all glass and steel. Modern. Expensive looking. the kind of place that screamed success. I took the elevator to the 15th floor. The reception area was elegant. Minimalist furniture. Large windows overlooking the city. A young woman at the desk looked up when I entered. "I'm here to see Koharu-chan," I said. "My name is Rebecca." She smiled. "Of course. She's expecting you. Let her know you're here." She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then gestured to a hallway. "Third door on the right. She'll meet you there." I walked down the hallway, my heart pounding. The third door was open. Inside was a conference room, large table, comfortable chairs, more windows with views of the bay. And standing by the windows was a woman about my age, maybe a year or two younger. She was petite, with dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail, wearing a charcoal gray suit that looked expensive and professional. She turned when I entered, and I saw Yudo's eyes, the same intelligent, assessing gaze. "Rebecca," she said, and her voice was warm, kind. "Thank you for coming." She crossed the room and extended her hand. I shook it, and her grip was firm. "Please sit." She gestured to the chairs around the table. She stepped out for a moment and came back with 2 bottles of water. She gave me 1 bottle and sat down across from me. "How are you holding up?" she asked. The simple question, asked with genuine concern, almost broke me. "I don't know. I haven't really processed any of it yet." "That's normal. You're in shock. It's going to take time." She opened a leather portfolio and pulled out a legal pad. "Did you bring any documents?" I set the tote bag on the table. I brought everything I could find. Tax returns, bank statements, mortgage papers, investment summaries. I told Koharu that I had backed up all in a secure cloud drive. And I've brought a USB drive with copies of everything, plus printed summaries of the most critical documents. Her eyes widened slightly, impressed. "Excellent. Being prepared this way is very smart." She began flipping through the folders while I opened the USB drive to show her the file structure. "Rebecca, everything here could be crucial. Your husband has been moving money without your knowledge, and I can already see potential evidence of financial misconduct. This includes offshore transfers, hidden accounts, and any correspondence tied to these transactions." I nodded, feeling a sense of control for the first time. "I've organized it by date and type, so it's easy to follow." "Good," she said, her voice taking on a sharp professional edge. "We're going to need both digital and printed copies for the case. The cloud backups are perfect for remote review, but printed copies are essential for cross-referencing, notes, and court filings." I slid the printed summaries closer to her, and she began annotating immediately, comparing them to the files on the USB. "You've done very well, Rebecca. This will make our work faster and more precise. We'll be able to trace every dollar and every communication. Now, let's review everything systematically." For the next hour, we went through the evidence together: offshore accounts, suspicious transactions, investment properties I never knew existed, and emails between Timothy and Delilah. She explained how each piece could be used in court or to protect me from further financial loss. And I followed along carefully, asking precise questions and confirming details. When I told Koharu about the baby monitor, she said, "Rebecca, this could be huge. If your husband has been making calls about the offshore accounts, about the affair, about his plans, all of that could be on those recordings." She pulled out her phone, started typing notes. "Okay, here's what I need you to do. This weekend, you need to go through every single recording. I know it's a lot. I know it's going to be painful, but we need to know what's on there. When you find something relevant, save it separately. Create a folder just for evidence. Back everything up. Multiple locations. Cloud storage, external hard drive. Email it to yourself. We can't risk losing any of this." "I will," I said. "Good." Koharu pulled out a business card and slid it across the table. "This is my direct cell number. If you find something urgent, something that concerns you, call me. Day or night. Don't wait." I took the card, added it to the one Yudo had given me. Koharu told me that while we gather more evidence, I should pretend like I'm open to reconciliation, that I'm willing to forgive, that I'm the same passive, trusting wife Timothy had always known. Because while he's thinking that while he's getting comfortable again, we're going to be gathering everything we need to destroy him in court. By the end, we had a strategy, cloud backups for security, printed summaries for quick reference, and a complete plan for documenting everything. I felt more empowered than I had in years, finally in a position where I could protect myself and act decisively. Koharu walked me to the door. Rebecca, I know this is overwhelming. I know it's scary, but you're not alone in this. My father and we've got your back. And you're stronger than you think you are. You proved that last night. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. I don't know how to thank you for all of this. Win, she said simply. That's how you thank me. We get you a fair settlement. We make sure you're protected. We prove that underestimating you was the biggest mistake your husband ever made. That's all the thanks I need. I left her office and walked to my car in a daze. I had a plan now, a strategy, a team, and I had 6 months of recordings to go through. I drove home, parked in the driveway. Then I went inside and put the folders back exactly where I'd found them in Timothy's office. Went to the kitchen, started making dinner. When Timothy came home that evening, I was at the stove, stirring pasta sauce. He stopped in the doorway, looking surprised. Rebecca, you're making dinner. I looked up, made my face soft, vulnerable. I thought we should eat. Talk maybe. If you want to. Relief flooded his features. Yeah, yes, I would really like that. And just like that, I began my performance. The hurt, but forgiving wife. The confused but willing wife. The wife Timothy expected me to be. While secretly, quietly, I built the case that would take everything away from him. We ate dinner, made small talk. Timothy apologized again, said he had been under stress, that he had said things he didn't mean. I nodded, said I understood, said I needed time, but I wanted to work through this. I told him that I love him, and I want to make our marriage work. I watched him relax. I saw the tension leave his shoulders. I saw him start to believe that everything was going to be okay. After dinner, I cleaned up, told him I was tired, going to bed early. He kissed my forehead. Thank you for giving me a chance, Rebecca. I won't let you down again. I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and pulled out my laptop. It was time to start going through the recordings. I opened the baby monitor app, pulled up the saved files, and started from 6 months ago. The first few were nothing, just Timothy typing, the sound of him on work calls, Machi meowing. But then, dated 5 months back, I heard something different. Timothy's voice, warm in a way it never was with me anymore. He was telling Delilah how much he loves her and how he would divorce me and marry her once he becomes a vice president. I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands shaking. This is an undeniable evidence. Then I kept listening. Over the next 3 hours, I found more. Calls to banks in Hong Kong. Calls to Delilah. Planning their future. Talking about apartments they had looked at online. Discussing when they would finally be able to stop hiding. Every single one, saved and backed up. By midnight, I had 17 recordings that were pure gold. 17 pieces of evidence that proved exactly what Timothy had been planning. I sat back, exhausted, my eyes burning from staring at the screen. I spent 4 weeks quietly gathering evidence while pretending to have forgiven Timothy, pretending that I love him beyond words, and pretending that nothing mattered anymore except his happiness. And Timothy fell for it without thinking twice. He became completely relaxed, started sleeping in our bedroom again, stopped being so careful with his phone, started talking about our future like nothing had happened. I played along. I cooked his dinner, asked about his day, and pretended nothing had changed. Koharu was building the case. I met with her twice a week at her office, bringing new evidence, documentation, discussing strategy, and methodically building the case that would destroy him. We were going to file for divorce and simultaneously report his financial misconduct to his company's ethics board. The offshore accounts violated company policy. She had discovered he could lose not just our marriage, but also his career. The papers were served on a Thursday. I had wanted it to be a Monday. There was something poetic about starting the week with destruction. But Koharu said Thursday was better. He'll get them at work. and he'll have to sit with it through the weekend before he can really do anything about it. Trust me, Thursday is perfect. So Thursday it was. Koharu had built a case so airtight that Timothy's own lawyer would probably advise him to settle immediately. I woke up that Thursday morning at 6, like I had every morning for the past month. Timothy was still asleep beside me, one arm thrown over his head, snoring softly. He looked peaceful, untroubled. He had no idea this was the last morning he'd wake up in this bed as my husband. I got up, quietly went downstairs, and made coffee. The house was silent, except for Machi purring from her spot on the kitchen counter. I scratched behind her ears, and she leaned into my hand. "Today's the day," I whispered to her. "Everything changes today." She meowed softly like she understood. Timothy came down around 7, already dressed for work. He grabbed a travel mug, poured coffee into it, and kissed my forehead affectionately like he truly meant it. "Today is a big day," he said. "We have a board meeting at 10. I might be late tonight." "Okay," I said. I kept my voice light and normal. "I'll keep dinner warm." He smiled and squeezed my shoulder. "You're the best, Rebecca. I don't tell you that enough." I watched him leave, heard the garage door open, heard his car pull out of the driveway, and then I allowed myself a small, cold smile. At 10:15 a.m., according to the plan, a process server walked into Timothy's office building, asked the receptionist for Timothy, was directed to the 3rd floor, corner office, handed Timothy an envelope containing divorce papers, a motion freezing all marital assets, and a notice that Rebecca Bailey was suing for fraud, financial abuse, and breach of fiduciary duty. I imagined his face when he opened that envelope, imagined the color draining from his cheeks, imagined him reading the first page, then the second, then flipping through the rest of the thick stack of papers with growing horror. Imagined him realizing that his simple, passive wife, the woman who had pretended to forgive his betrayal, had just destroyed his entire world. I was at work when it happened, sitting at my desk, pretending to review a social media calendar while watching the clock. My phone rang 3 times within minutes, all from Timothy. I let them go to voicemail. Within 40 minutes, Timothy had made more than 25 missed calls and sent 15 messages. I didn't reply to any of them. At 11 o'clock, I received a call from an unknown number. I answered. "Is this Rebecca Bailey?" A woman's voice asked, professional and calm. "Yes." "This is Amanda Vickers from Koharu Chen's office. Ms. Chen asked me to call and confirm that service was completed at 10:17 a.m. this morning. Your husband has been served." "Okay, thank you," I responded. "Ms. Chen also wanted me to remind you not to engage with your husband directly. Do not answer his calls or texts. If at any point you feel unsafe, do not go home. If he shows up at your workplace, call security immediately. Do you understand?" "Yes," I responded. "Good." She continued. "Ms. Chen will call you this afternoon to discuss next steps. We are preparing an emergency restraining order based on any escalation today. Do you have any questions?" "No, thank you." She hung up. I sat at my desk, staring at my computer screen, trying to process the fact that it was done. Really done. After 4 weeks of pretending, of gathering evidence, of playing a role, it was finally real. I was divorcing Timothy. The thought felt surreal and terrifying and exhilarating all at once. My phone buzzed. A message from Timothy. "Get home immediately. Let's talk." I didn't respond. Koharu had already warned me that if I absolutely had to meet him, it needed to be in a public place. Men like Timothy did not accept defeat or loss of control easily. I watched the messages come in, one after another, cycling between pleading and demanding, between apologetic and furious. This was Timothy losing control. Timothy realized he couldn't manage this situation, couldn't smooth it over, and couldn't make it disappear with explanations and manipulation. For the first time in our 15-year marriage, I wasn't going to bend. My desk phone rang. I picked up. "Rebecca, you have a visitor in the lobby," Cheryl from reception said, her voice uncertain. "Your husband. He seems very upset." "Call security," I said immediately. "Do not let him up. I don't want to see him." I hung up and called Koharu right away. "Document everything," she said. "If he causes a scene, if security has to remove him, We want that on record. Get the footage if you can. 5 minutes later, Cheryl called back. Security escorted him out, she said. He refused to leave at first and was raising his voice. He was very angry. Are you okay? I'm fine. Thank you, Cheryl. I replied, but my hands were shaking now. I had never seen Timothy genuinely angry before. Frustrated, yes. Annoyed, certainly. But not like this. The fact that he had left work in the middle of the day to come to my office and that security had to remove him scared me more than I wanted to admit. At noon, Clara called. When I told her Timothy had shown up at my workplace, her voice changed immediately. Listen to me, she said. You are not going home today. You're packing a bag and staying with me for a few days, at least until we know he has calmed down. I tried to refuse, but she didn't let me. Rebecca, you don't know what he might do. Men who are used to being in control don't react well when that control disappears. I've seen this before. I don't want to scare you, but I don't want you taking chances. I thought about the messages, the rage, the entitlement, the way he had shown up uninvited. Okay, I said quietly, I'll come to your place. Can you leave work now? She asked. I think so. I'll talk to my manager. I replied. Do that now, she said, and Rebecca, I'm proud of you. I know this is terrifying, but you did it. After we hung up, I went to my manager and explained that I was dealing with a personal emergency. She took one look at my face and told me to take the rest of the week off. I went back to my desk, grabbed my purse, and left. The drive home felt surreal. I kept checking my rearview mirror, half expecting to see Timothy's car following me. But the road behind me was clear. When I pulled into our driveway, his car wasn't there. He was probably still at work or driving around somewhere trying to process what had happened. I went inside quickly. Machi greeted me with confused meows. I was never home this early. I know, baby, I said, scooping her up. Everything's changing. I went upstairs and packed a bag. Clothes for a few days. Toiletries. My laptop. Important documents I had been keeping in a folder under the bed. My birth certificate, social security card, and passport. Then I went to Timothy's home office one more time. I looked around the room. At his desk, where he had made all those calls to Delilah. At the filing cabinet where he had hidden the documents. At the chair where he had sat, planning a future that did not include me. Convinced I was too simple to ever find out. Goodbye, I said to the empty room. Then I grabbed Machi's carrier, loaded her protesting body into it, and left. I did not look back. The drive to Clara's apartment took 20 minutes. She was waiting in the doorway when I arrived, and the moment I saw her face, concerned, fierce, and genuinely relieved to see me, I started crying. Hey, it's okay, she said, pulling me into a hug. You're okay. You're safe. Come on, let's get you inside. Her apartment was small but warm. She had set up the guest room with fresh sheets and left a bottle of water on the nightstand. I know it's not much, she said, but it's yours for as long as you need it. It's perfect, I said. Thank you, Clara. We ordered takeout and sat on the couch eating Thai food. We did not talk about Timothy or the divorce. We talked about work, movies, and the upstairs neighbor who apparently practiced tap dancing at midnight. It felt normal. Like, maybe life could be normal again someday. Around 8 p.m., Koharu called. I wanted to update you, she said. First, the temporary restraining order was approved this afternoon. Timothy cannot contact you directly, cannot come to your workplace, and cannot come near Clara's address. If he violates it, he will be arrested. That's great, I said. Second, his lawyer contacted my office earlier. Timothy wants to talk. He wants to resolve this quietly, without court involvement. I told them no. We are not negotiating until discovery is complete, and we have a full accounting of all assets. They were not pleased, but that's not our concern. She continued. Third, and this is important, Timothy has been placed on administrative leave by his company. I felt my chest tighten. Koharu clarified immediately. This is not because of the divorce. My office submitted a separate, formal complaint to his company's ethics and compliance board the same day. We filed. The The complaint included recordings and documentation showing that Timothy used company time, work calls, and internal resources to manage offshore accounts, arrange personal financial transfers, and plan a relocation tied to his affair. Once the ethics board reviewed the material, they placed him on administrative leave pending a full internal investigation. That is standard procedure in cases like this. He deserves it, I muttered. Yes, Koharu said. Your husband wasn't just stealing from you. He was misusing his employer's resources for personal gain. They needed to know. Based on what we submitted, there is a strong likelihood he will be terminated. Part of me felt a flicker of guilt. Timothy's career had been everything to him. Losing it would devastate him. Then I remembered that he had been planning to leave me with nothing. This was not cruelty. This was a consequence. Koharu continued. His lawyer is pushing for a peaceful divorce to limit professional fallout. We declined. We have evidence of fraud, financial abuse, and adultery. We are not dropping anything. If Timothy wants to minimize damage, he can agree to our terms. Otherwise, we go to court. She outlined the settlement. A 60-40 division of all marital assets in your favor, reimbursement of the $127,000 he moved offshore, 3 years of spousal support while you rebuild your career, and full payment of your legal fees. I blinked. Will he agree to that? If he's smart, yes, she said. If not, the court will likely award you more. The evidence is overwhelming. After we hung up, I sat quietly. Within 6 hours of being served, Timothy was on administrative leave, facing a divorce that would strip him of most of what he had built. His world was collapsing, and I had made it happen. I did not feel guilt. I felt power. For 12 years, I had let Timothy make me small. Let him control our finances and our future. Let him believe I was incapable of understanding what mattered. In 4 weeks, I had dismantled everything. Clara came back with 2 glasses of wine. We talked for half an hour before going to bed. That night, lying in bed, I thought about the dinner 4 weeks earlier, about understanding every word while Timothy thought I was oblivious. I thought about Yuto walking away from $40 million because he could not tolerate Timothy's character. I thought about Koharu, who had survived her own nightmare and chose to help other women survive theirs. I thought about Clara, who had answered my call after 3 years of silence without judgment. And I thought about myself. I was not simple. I was not passive. I was capable. I fell asleep with my phone in my hand and Machi purring beside me. And for the first time in 12 years, I could breathe. The divorce took 8 months. California law required a 6-month waiting period. And the remaining time was spent negotiating the settlement. On the final day, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Timothy sat across from me, gaunt and disheveled, his lawyer tense beside him. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and decades of experience, presided with authority, reviewed the evidence as Koharu laid out the case: systematic asset transfers, financial deception, and a 6-month affair funded with marital money. The evidence was meticulous. Bank statements, recordings, timelines. Timothy attempted explanations, framing his financial maneuvers as legitimate planning, but the judge dismissed these claims. Every transfer had been conducted without my knowledge or consent, every affair kept secret, and every plan to relocate abroad meticulously hidden. The court recognized the level of premeditation involved, and the consequences were immediate. Our proposed settlement included a 60-40 division of all marital assets, reimbursement of the hidden $127,000, 3 years of spousal support, and coverage of all legal fees. Timothy's attempts to request a continuance were denied. The evidence was complete, thorough, and irrefutable. Within minutes, the judge approved the dissolution of marriage and all terms as proposed. 12 years of manipulation, betrayal, and calculated deception concluded in a matter of minutes. I left the courthouse feeling the weight of months lifted from my shoulders. The strategic planning, the collection of evidence, and the professional guidance from Koharu had ensured not only justice, but protection. For the first time in years, I felt empowered, free, and in command of my own life. As I walked towards the exit with Koharu, Timothy's voice stopped me. Rebecca, he called. He was standing now, his lawyer trying to pull him back. But Timothy shook him off and took a step toward me. Rebecca, please, can we just talk? For 5 minutes. Just you and me. Koharu stepped between us. You're under a restraining order, Mr. Timothy. You're not allowed to speak to my client. I just want to understand. Timothy's voice was desperate now. Raw. How did you do all this? How did you learn Japanese without me knowing? How did you get all that evidence? I looked at him and chuckled. You stopped paying attention to me. I said, quietly, you stopped seeing me. You thought I was a furniture. So I became invisible. And invisible people see everything. His face crumpled. Rebecca, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know I hurt you. I know I lied. But you destroyed my life. No, I said. And my voice was steady. Strong. I didn't destroy your life, Timothy. You did that all by yourself. You lied. You stole. You cheated. You planned to leave me with nothing. All I did was refuse to let you get away with it. I loved you, Rebecca, he said more calmly. I still love you. We could have worked through this. We could have gone to counseling, talked things through. You loved me. I felt something hot flare in my chest. You called me simple. You said our marriage was dead. You told a stranger. I was too passive to notice you were planning to leave. You spent 6 months sleeping with someone else. That's not love, Timothy. That's contempt. I was stressed. I said things I didn't mean it. You meant every word, I said. And I heard every word. Every casual dismissal. Every lie. Every plan you made for a future. Without me. I sat there at that dinner and listened to you describe me as worthless. As nothing. And you thought I was too stupid to understand. His eyes were shining now. I never thought you were stupid. Yes, you did. You thought I was too simple to handle finances. Too passive to fight back. Too ignorant to learn a language you were speaking right in front of me. I took a step closer to him. But you were wrong about me, Timothy. You were wrong about everything. I learned Japanese in 8 months. I gathered evidence for 4 weeks without you suspecting because I made you feel I had forgiven you. I built a case, so strong your own lawyer told you to settle. I did all of that, Timothy. Me, the woman you thought was too simple to matter. Tears were running down his face now. I know I underestimated you. I know I was wrong. But Rebecca, please. Goodbye. Timothy, this conversation is over. I said, and I turned and walked away. Koharu followed me out of the courtroom, down the hallway, out into the bright California sunshine. I stood on the courthouse steps, taking deep breaths, my hands shaking now that the adrenaline was wearing off. Are you okay? Koharu asked. Yes, it's really over. The judge signed the order. As of today, you're officially divorced. The asset transfer will take a few weeks to process, but legally, you're done. Done. I was done. I sat down on the steps, suddenly too shaky to stand. Koharu sat beside me. That was brave what you said in there. To Timothy. I've been wanting to say it for 3 months. I could tell. She smiled. You know, when my father first called me about you, I wasn't sure what to expect. He said you were strong, that you'd survived something terrible with grace. But I didn't really understand until now. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's what strength is, Rebecca. It's not about never being afraid or never falling apart. It's about doing what needs to be done even when you're terrified. And you did that. You did everything right. We sat in silence for a moment. What happens now? I asked. Now you rebuild. You figure out what you want your life to look like. You start over. Koharu stood and offered me her hand. And you thanked my father for being nosy and interfering in your marriage. I laughed, took her hand, and let her pull me to my feet. Is he here? In California? Yes, he flew in yesterday. She replied. He wanted to be here in case you needed anything. He's been following the case closely. She checked her watch. Actually, he asked if you'd have lunch with us. If you're up for it. Really? I asked, surprised. He would like to see how you're doing. And I think he'd like to know that walking away from that business deal was worth it. I thought about Yudo, about the stranger who had cared enough to help me. who had walked away from $40 million because he couldn't stand by and watch another woman suffer the way his daughter had. I would like that, I said. I would really like that. We met Yudo at a small Japanese restaurant in the financial district. He stood when I entered and bowed, the same respectful bow he had given me at the end of the disastrous dinner 7 months ago. Rebecca-san, he said warmly, "It is very good to see you." "Thank you for coming," I said. "You didn't have to fly all the way here." "Of course I did. I wanted to make sure you were all right, and to see the outcome of the case." He gestured to the table. "Please sit. Let us eat and talk." Over lunch, I told him everything. About the evidence gathering, about the 4 weeks of pretending, about the recordings and the bank statements. Yudo listened intently, occasionally asking questions, his expression thoughtful. "You are very brave," he said when I finished, "and very smart, smarter than your husband ever realized." "I had help," I said, looking at Koharu. "A lot of help." "Yes, but you did the hard work. You gathered the evidence. You played the role. You stayed strong, even when it must have been very difficult." He paused. "My daughter tells me your husband lost his position at his company." "Yes," I replied. "They terminated him last month after their investigation concluded." Yudo nodded slowly. "And the partnership, the one he wanted so badly, I heard his company lost that opportunity as well." I nodded and said, "Yes, they did. I think they tried to salvage it with another account manager. But your company declined." "We did." Yudo's voice was firm. "I told my board that any company that would employ a man like Timothy was not a company I wanted to do business with. They agreed." I stared at him. "You cost them the deal because of me?" "No. I cost them the deal because of him. Because of his character. Because I do not do business with people who have no integrity." He met my eyes. "And because I wanted your husband to understand that his actions have consequences. Not just for you. For everyone around him." Something warm bloomed in my chest. "Thank you," I said, "for everything. For walking away from that dinner. For giving me Koharu's number. For caring about a stranger." "You are not a stranger," Yudo said gently. "You are someone who needed help. And I have learned that when you can help someone, you should. Especially when you have the power to make a difference." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a business card. His card was like the one he had given me that night, but this one was blank on the back. "I know you are rebuilding your life," he said. "I know you are starting over. And I want you to know that if you ever need anything, a reference, a connection, an opportunity, you can call me. My company does not have an American office yet, but we are planning to open one in the next year. And when we do, I would very much like you to be part of it." I took the card with shaking hands. "You're offering me a job?" I asked, surprised. "I am offering you an opportunity." He replied, "If you want it. No pressure. But I think you would be very good at building bridges between cultures, at helping people understand each other. You have already proven you can learn languages, adapt to difficult situations, and stay calm under pressure. These are valuable skills." I looked at Koharu. She was smiling. "You should take it," she said. "My father's company is excellent, and he's right. You'd be amazing at it." I don't know what to say. "Say you will think about it," Yudo said. "There is no rush. Take your time. Heal. Rest. And when you are ready, if you want to explore this opportunity, call me." We finished lunch and talked about lighter things. Yudo told stories about his grandchildren. Koharu shared updates about cases she was working on. I told them about Clara's apartment, about Machi, and about the small routines I had built in my new life. It felt good. Normal. Like maybe I could have this someday. Easy conversation. Friendship. A life that wasn't defined by hiding and pretending and trying to be small enough to fit into the space someone else had left for me. When we said goodbye outside the restaurant, Yudo bowed to me again. "You are very strong, Rebecca-san. Stronger than you know. I am glad I could help, even a little." "You helped more than a little," I said. "You saved me." "No," he said gently. "I gave you tools, but you saved yourself." I watched him walk away, Koharu beside him, their heads bent together in conversation. Then I stood on the San Francisco sidewalk, the afternoon sun warm on my face, holding a business card that represented a future I had never imagined. A future where I wasn't Timothy's wife, where I wasn't defined by what someone else thought I should be, where I was just Rebecca, strong, capable, fluent in Japanese, and ready to start over. I pulled out my phone and texted Clara. "It's over. I won. Come home and I'll tell you everything." Her response came immediately. "We are celebrating tonight. I'm buying champagne. You're a badass." I smiled and started walking to my car. I was a badass. It had taken me 15 years, a failed marriage, and learning an entire language in secret to realize it. But I was never, ever going to forget it again. 5 years later, I stood in the lobby of Chin Technologies' new American headquarters in San Francisco, watching the sun set over the bay through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The plaque on the wall behind the reception desk read, Rebecca Bailey, Director of International Relations. My name, my title, my career. I had taken up Yudo's offer 18 months after the divorce was finalized, started as a consultant, helping build the American office. Within a year, I was running it. Within 2 years, I was opening satellite offices in Los Angeles and Seattle. Within 3 years, I was fluent in 3 languages and had a team of 40 people working under me. I traveled to Tokyo 4 times a year, had dinner with Yudo and his family, watched his grandchildren grow up, became friends with Koharu, who lives in California, and sometimes consulted on our company's legal matters. Clara was still my best friend. We had dinner every week. She'd recently gotten engaged to a woman she met at a legal conference, and I was going to be her maid of honor. I'd tried dating, eventually. Nothing serious yet. A few coffee dates. A couple of short relationships that fizzled out naturally. I wasn't in a rush. I'd spent 15 years in the wrong relationship. I could take my time finding the right one. Machi was still with me, older and slower now, but still purring from her favorite sunny spot in my apartment that I paid for with my own money, that had my name on the lease and nobody else's. Sometimes I thought about Timothy, wondered where he was and what he was doing. I'd heard through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved to the East Coast. He found another job, though not as prestigious as the one he'd lost. Just like Timothy, Delilah was sacked from the company too. Last I heard, their relationship hit the rocks, and he was engaged to someone new. I hoped he'd learned something. I hoped he treated her better than he'd treated me. But mostly, I didn't think about him at all. Because my life wasn't about Timothy anymore. It wasn't about the woman I had been when I was married to him. It wasn't about being small or quiet or accommodating. It was about me. About the life I'd built from the ashes of a marriage that should have ended years before it did. About the woman who had learned to speak. Not just in Japanese, though that had started it all, but in every way that mattered. I spoke up in meetings, shared my ideas, disagreed when I thought something was wrong, asked for raises, set boundaries, said no when I meant no, and yes when I meant yes. I spoke and people listened. My phone buzzed. A text from Yudo. Are you still at the office? Koharu and I are in the city. Join us for dinner. I smiled and typed back. I'd love to. Where should I meet you? His response. Sushi Gen. I thought it would be fitting. Sushi Gen. The restaurant where it had all begun. Where I'd sat in that navy dress and heard the truth. Where I'd spoken Japanese for the first time in front of Timothy and watched his world start to crumble. Where I had met Yudo, the man who helped me become who I was always meant to be. I grabbed my coat and headed for the elevator. 5 years ago, I'd walked into that restaurant as someone's wife, someone's accessory, someone who'd spent 12 years making herself small. Tonight, I'd walk in as myself, and that made all the difference. If you have followed this story up to this extent, I want to say thank you so much for watching. This journey from a woman who felt invisible in her own marriage to someone who took control of her life and built something remarkable is a testament to the strength we women carry inside us, even when we don't realize it's there. Rebecca's story reminds us that sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who see us the least, and that learning to see ourselves clearly, to value our own worth, to trust our own instincts, and to speak our own truth is the most important lesson we can ever learn. If this story resonated with you, I would love to hear about it. Please leave a comment below and share your thoughts. I have 2 questions for you. First, have you ever felt invisible in a relationship? Whether it was a marriage, a friendship, or even a family dynamic. Have you ever felt like someone stopped seeing the real you? How did you handle it? Did you speak up? Or did you stay silent? Your story might help someone else who's struggling with the same thing. Second, if you discovered a betrayal the way Rebecca did, by understanding something you weren't supposed to understand, what would you do? Would you confront immediately, or would you gather evidence first? Would you try to save the relationship? Or would you walk away? There's no right answer, but I'd love to know what you think. Please share your experiences in the comments. Your story matters. Your voice matters. And you never know who might need to hear that they're not alone. One last thing before we end this story. Please help us grow by subscribing to this channel and turning on notifications so you don't miss future stories. I share true stories about resilience, courage, and women who refused to accept less than they deserved. Stories about second chances and new beginnings. Stories about ordinary women who did extraordinary things. Encourage someone to watch this video. Someone who's feeling small in their own life. Someone who needs to be reminded that they're stronger than they think. And remember, you are not too simple. You are not too passive. You are not too anything. You are exactly enough. You just need to remember it. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening to Rebecca's story. And thank you for being part of this community. I'll see you in the next video. Please turn on your notification bell so you don't miss it. Take care of yourselves. I love you all.